Question 1. Performance analysis shows that a candidate taking their driving test in Leeds appears significantly nervous, exhibiting slight tremors and a tendency to overcorrect steering. Considering the DVSA guidelines for assessing driving ability, which of the following represents the most appropriate professional response from the examiner? Option A. Offer extensive verbal reassurance and coaching to help the candidate relax, potentially overlooking minor errors to encourage them. Option B. Focus primarily on the candidate's emotional state, making allowances for minor driving errors because of their apparent anxiety. Option C. Continue the test, objectively observing and recording all driving faults against the DVSA standards while maintaining professional neutrality. Option D. Immediately terminate the test due to the candidate's visible nervousness, as it suggests they are not in a fit state to drive. Correct answer is C. Continue the test, objectively observing and recording all driving faults against the DVSA standards while maintaining professional neutrality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in the Leeds driving test environment where a candidate exhibits nervousness that could potentially impact their ability to demonstrate safe driving. The examiner must balance the need to assess the candidate's actual driving ability against the influence of external factors like anxiety, while strictly adhering to the DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, guidelines for conducting tests in Leeds. The professional challenge lies in making an objective assessment without being overly lenient or unduly harsh due to the candidate's emotional state. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the examiner maintaining a neutral and objective stance, focusing on observable driving performance against the established DVSA standards for the Leeds test routes. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the DVSA mandate to assess a candidate's ability to drive safely and competently on public roads, irrespective of their emotional state, as long as that state does not compromise safety. The examiner's role is to evaluate the driving itself, not to provide therapeutic intervention. This adheres to the principle of fair and consistent assessment for all candidates. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves the examiner attempting to reassure the candidate extensively or offering prolonged encouragement beyond standard professional courtesy. This is professionally unacceptable because it deviates from the objective assessment protocol. While empathy is important, excessive reassurance can be perceived as coaching or an attempt to influence the outcome, potentially compromising the integrity of the test and creating an unfair advantage or disadvantage compared to other candidates. It also risks the examiner missing critical driving faults due to being distracted by managing the candidate's emotional state. Another incorrect approach is for the examiner to immediately terminate the test at the first sign of nervousness, even if no driving faults have occurred. This is professionally unacceptable, as it fails to allow the candidate the opportunity to demonstrate their driving skills. The DVSA guidelines permit a certain level of nervousness, and the test is designed to assess driving ability under typical road conditions, which can include minor stress. Terminating the test prematurely without a clear safety risk or significant driving fault would be an arbitrary decision, not based on objective performance. A further incorrect approach would be for the examiner to overlook minor driving faults due to the candidate's apparent nervousness. This is professionally unacceptable because it compromises the DVSA standards for safe driving. Every fault, regardless of the candidate's emotional state, must be assessed against the official marking scheme. Overlooking faults undermines the credibility of the test and could result in an unsafe driver being licensed, posing a risk to themselves and other road users in Leeds. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes objective observation and adherence to established regulatory standards. This involves 1. Understanding the DVSA assessment criteria for driving faults and the acceptable level of minor errors. 2. Maintaining professional detachment while remaining observant of the candidate's driving actions. 3. Differentiating between nervousness that might cause minor, recoverable errors and a level of anxiety that demonstrably impairs safe driving. 4. Documenting all observed driving faults accurately and impartially. 5. Applying the DVSA rules consistently to all candidates, ensuring fairness and upholding public safety. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates that a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, is considering recommending a candidate for their practical driving test. The candidate has consistently performed the required maneuvers to a satisfactory standard during lessons and has expressed eagerness to book their test. However, the instructor has observed that the candidate sometimes struggles with independent decision-making when faced with complex traffic situations, such as navigating busy roundabouts or anticipating the actions of other road users in adverse weather conditions. Which of the following approaches best reflects the professional and regulatory requirements for recommending a candidate for practical driving test in Leeds, UK? Option A. Recommend the candidate for their test only after demonstrating consistent safe driving and independent decision-making in a wide variety of traffic and weather conditions, ensuring they meet the DVSA standards for a competent and safe driver. Option B. Recommend the candidate for their test to alleviate pressure from the candidate and their family, focusing on their ability to perform the specific maneuvers required for the test. Option C. Recommend the candidate for their test as they have met the basic requirements for maneuvers and are eager to proceed as the test itself will further refine their skills. Option D. Recommend the candidate for their test based on the number of hours of instruction they have received, assuming this indicates sufficient preparation. The correct answer is A. Recommend the candidate for their test only after demonstrating consistent safe driving and independent decision-making in a wide variety of traffic and weather conditions, ensuring they meet the DVSA standards for a competent and safe driver. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, as it involves balancing the need for efficient training with the paramount importance of ensuring a candidate is fully prepared and safe to drive independently, adhering to the standards set by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA. The instructor must exercise sound professional judgment to avoid compromising safety or the integrity of the testing process. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough, multifaceted assessment of the candidate's readiness, encompassing not just their ability to perform specific maneuvers, but also their consistent application of safe driving principles in varied traffic conditions. This includes evaluating their hazard perception, decision-making skills, and overall road awareness. The DVSA standards emphasize developing a competent and safe driver, not merely someone who can pass a test. Therefore, a comprehensive assessment that confirms the candidate's ability to drive safely and independently, even when faced with unexpected situations, is crucial. This aligns with the DVSA objective of reducing road casualties by ensuring only qualified drivers are licensed. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely focusing on the candidate's ability to execute the required test maneuvers perfectly. This fails to address the broader requirement of safe driving in real-world, unpredictable conditions. A candidate might be able to perform a bay park or pull up on the right perfectly in a controlled environment, but lack the judgment to anticipate a pedestrian stepping out from behind a parked car. This approach risks presenting an inadequately prepared driver to the DVSA, potentially leading to accidents and contravening the DVSA core mission of public safety. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the candidate's desire to book their test quickly over their actual readiness. This could lead to the instructor feeling pressured to pass a candidate who is not yet safe, perhaps by overlooking minor errors or not providing sufficient practice in challenging scenarios. This is ethically unsound and directly undermines the DVSA licensing standards, which are designed to protect the public. It also damages the instructor's professional reputation and could lead to disciplinary action. A third incorrect approach is to assume that because a candidate has completed a set number of hours, they are automatically ready for their test. The number of hours is a guideline, not a guarantee of competence. Each learner progresses at a different pace, and some may require more or less instruction. A professional assessment must be based on demonstrated skill and safety, not on a predetermined duration of training. This approach neglects the individual needs of the learner and the dynamic nature of driving proficiency. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and adherence to regulatory standards above all else. This involves 1. Continuously assessing the candidate's progress against the DVSA learning objectives and test standards. 2. Maintaining open and honest communication with the candidate about their strengths and areas for improvement. 3. Exercising independent professional judgment regarding test readiness without succumbing to external pressures. 4. understanding that the ultimate goal is to produce a safe and responsible driver, not just a test passer. Question 3. Investigation of process optimization for Leeds driving test preparation reveals a scenario where an approved driving instructor, Addy, is coaching a candidate who has consistently made minor errors throughout their lessons. On the final mock test, the candidate makes one serious fault but otherwise drives competently, with the instructor believing the candidate is almost there and could potentially pass if they drive smoothly on the actual test day. Considering the DVSA regulatory framework for driving tests in the UK, which approach to advising the candidate about their mock test performance best aligns with professional and ethical obligations. Option A. Recommend booking the test immediately, assuring the candidate that the serious fault is a rare occurrence and that the instructor can use their experience to manage the examiner's perception during the test, focusing on a few key areas to mask any underlying issues. Option B. Emphasize that the serious fault is a clear indication they are not yet ready for the test, explaining how it directly impacts road safety and compliance with DVSA standards, and advise further practice focusing on eliminating such errors before booking the actual test. Option C. Suggest that the serious fault was a minor oversight and that the candidate should focus on their strengths, as examiners are often lenient with minor errors if the overall drive is good, and that the instructor can subtly guide them during the test to avoid drawing attention to any slips. Option D. Advise the candidate that while the serious fault is noted, their overall competent driving suggests they have a good chance of passing if they avoid similar mistakes on the test day, and that the instructor will provide last-minute tips to help them navigate potential examiner scrutiny. The correct answer is B. Emphasize that the serious fault is a clear indication they are not yet ready for the test, explaining how it directly impacts road safety and compliance with DVSA standards, and advise further practice focusing on eliminating such errors before booking the actual test. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Leeds driving instructor due to the inherent responsibility of ensuring a candidate is not only technically proficient, but also safe and legally compliant to operate a vehicle independently on public roads in West Yorkshire. The pressure to pass candidates, coupled with the need to uphold the integrity of the driving test process and public safety, requires careful judgment. The instructor must balance the candidate's desire to pass with the paramount importance of road safety and adherence to the UK's Driving Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough and objective assessment of the candidate's driving skills against the DVSA published standards for the Leeds area. This means identifying and documenting all faults, categorizing them correctly, minor, serious, dangerous, and providing clear, constructive feedback. The instructor must ensure the candidate understands the reasons for any faults, particularly serious or dangerous ones, and how they impact road safety and compliance with the highway code. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the DVSA mandate to ensure all newly qualified drivers are safe and competent, thereby protecting other road users in Leeds and upholding the professional standards expected of approved driving instructors, ADDI. It prioritizes public safety and the integrity of the licensing process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking or downplaying a serious fault because the candidate is otherwise performing well, and the instructor believes they can get away with it on the day. This is professionally unacceptable as it directly contravenes DVSA regulations, which mandate that any serious or dangerous fault results in an automatic fail, regardless of the number of minor faults. Ethically, it compromises public safety by potentially allowing an unsafe driver onto the roads of Leeds. Another incorrect approach is to pass a candidate who has demonstrated a pattern of minor faults that, while not individually serious, collectively indicate a lack of consistent observation or anticipation. This is incorrect because the DVSA guidelines emphasize that a combination of minor faults can lead to a serious fault if they indicate a developing hazard or a lack of awareness. Failing to recognize this cumulative risk is a failure to properly assess the candidate's overall competence and adherence to safe driving practices. A further incorrect approach is to pressure the candidate to drive in a manner that is overly aggressive or risky to impress the examiner, or to suggest that certain minor rule bending is acceptable. This is fundamentally flawed as it encourages unsafe and illegal driving. The goal of driving instruction is to produce safe, responsible, and law-abiding drivers, not those who take unnecessary risks or disregard traffic regulations in Leeds. This approach undermines the entire purpose of the driving test and the instructor's professional duty. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes objective assessment against established standards. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the DVSA assessment criteria and the Highway Code. 2. Conducting a mock test that simulates real-world conditions in Leeds, allowing for objective fault identification. 3. Providing honest and constructive feedback, focusing on the candidate's development towards safe driving. 4. Recognizing that the ultimate responsibility lies with ensuring public safety, not solely with facilitating a pass. If a candidate does not meet the required standard, it is the instructor's professional duty to advise them accordingly, even if it leads to disappointment. Question 4. Comparative studies suggest that optimizing processes can significantly improve service delivery. Considering the regulatory framework governing driving tests in Leeds, which approach to process optimization would best align with the DVSA mandate for road safety and driver competency? Option A. Implementing new, unvalidated technological solutions for driver assessment to streamline the testing process. Option B. Encouraging examiners to expedite their fault assessment and decision-making during the practical driving test to increase examiner throughput. Option C. Reducing the standard duration of the practical driving assessment to allow for a higher volume of candidates to be tested within operational hours. Option D. Systematically reviewing and refining existing test procedures, routes, and administrative tasks to identify and eliminate inefficiencies without compromising the thoroughness or duration of the driving assessment. The correct answer is D. Systematically reviewing and refining existing test procedures, routes, and administrative tasks to identify and eliminate inefficiencies without compromising the thoroughness or duration of the driving assessment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient service delivery with the paramount importance of ensuring all drivers meet the required safety standards for operating a vehicle on Leeds roads. A rushed or compromised testing process, even with the intention of optimizing throughput, can have severe consequences, including increased accident rates and public safety risks. The DVSA mandate is to ensure road safety, and any process optimization must align with this core objective. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic review of the current Leeds driving test process to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies that do not compromise the assessment of a candidate's ability to drive safely and competently. This includes analyzing examiner feedback, test route efficiency, and administrative procedures, with the goal of streamlining operations without reducing the rigor of the assessment. For example, optimizing test routes to minimize travel time between test locations, or improving the scheduling system to reduce waiting times for candidates, provided these changes do not shorten the actual driving assessment or overlook critical safety elements, would be considered. This approach is correct because it directly supports the DVSA objective of maintaining high road safety standards by improving efficiency while upholding the integrity of the driving test. It adheres to the principles of process optimization by seeking improvements within the existing regulatory framework, ensuring that all aspects of the test, including hazard perception and vehicle control, are thoroughly evaluated. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to reduce the duration of the practical driving assessment to accommodate more candidates per day. This is ethically and regulatorily unacceptable because it directly compromises the DVSA mandate to ensure drivers possess the necessary skills and knowledge for safe road use. Shortening the test could mean that crucial elements of driving, such as independent driving, responding to complex traffic situations, or demonstrating consistent vehicle control, are not adequately assessed, potentially leading to the licensing of unsafe drivers. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of test completion over the thoroughness of the examiner's evaluation. This might involve encouraging examiners to make quicker decisions or to overlook minor faults that, in aggregate, could indicate a developing unsafe driving habit. This is professionally unacceptable as it undermines the credibility of the driving test and fails to uphold the DVSA commitment to public safety. The assessment must be objective and comprehensive, regardless of time pressures. A further incorrect approach would be to implement a new, unproven technology for assessing driving skills without rigorous validation and DVSA approval. While innovation can be beneficial, introducing untested methods could lead to inaccurate assessments, either by failing competent drivers or passing incompetent ones, thereby jeopardizing road safety and public trust in the licensing system. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with optimizing processes within the Leeds driving test framework should adopt a data-driven and safety-first mindset. The decision-making process should begin with a clear understanding of the DVSA regulatory requirements and safety objectives. Any proposed changes should be evaluated against these core principles. A robust approach involves consulting with experienced examiners, analyzing historical test data for patterns of inefficiency, and conducting pilot studies of proposed optimizations to ensure they do not negatively impact the quality or safety of the assessment. The ultimate goal is to enhance efficiency in a manner that supports, rather than undermines, the DVSA mission to improve road safety. Question 5. The investigation demonstrates that a driving instructor in Leeds, United Kingdom, is reviewing their teaching methodology for a learner driver who is approaching their practical test. The instructor is considering how to best optimize the remaining practice sessions to ensure the learner is not only prepared for the specific test requirements, but also a safe and independent driver. Which of the following approaches best reflects a process optimization strategy aligned with DVSA standards for developing competent drivers? Option A. Accelerating the pace of instruction to cover all syllabus topics as quickly as possible, aiming to get the learner to a test-ready standard with minimal practice time, to reduce the overall cost for the learner. Option B. Focusing practice on the learner's perceived strengths and avoiding challenging situations or maneuvers they find difficult, to build confidence and ensure a smooth test experience. Option C. Concentrating practice sessions primarily on memorizing specific test routes and practicing the exact maneuvers as demonstrated in the official DVSA test, to maximize the chances of a successful outcome on the day. Option D. Implementing a structured learning plan that systematically introduces and reinforces a wide range of driving skills and hazard perception in diverse road and traffic conditions, with a focus on developing the learner's independent decision-making and problem-solving abilities, providing regular, constructive feedback. The correct answer is D. Implementing a structured learning plan that systematically introduces and reinforces a wide range of driving skills and hazard perception in diverse road and traffic conditions, with a focus on developing the learner's independent decision-making and problem-solving abilities, providing regular, constructive feedback. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a driving instructor in Leeds, United Kingdom, is faced with a situation that requires careful judgment regarding the optimization of a learner driver's practice sessions. The professional challenge lies in balancing the learner's immediate progress and confidence with the long-term goal of ensuring they are a safe and competent driver, fully prepared for the DVSA driving test and beyond. This requires an understanding of the DVSA emphasis on developing independent, safe driving habits rather than simply passing the test. The best approach involves a structured, progressive learning plan that prioritizes the development of core driving skills and hazard perception in varied road conditions, aligning with the DVSA syllabus and testing standards. This means systematically introducing new skills, reinforcing existing ones, and providing constructive feedback. The instructor should focus on building the learner's confidence and decision-making abilities, ensuring they can independently assess and respond to traffic situations safely. This aligns with the ethical duty of care owed to the learner and the public, and the regulatory requirement to train drivers to a standard that ensures road safety, as outlined by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA. An approach that focuses solely on drilling specific test routes or maneuvers without adequate consideration for the learner's overall understanding and adaptability is professionally unacceptable. This fails to equip the learner with the skills to handle unforeseen situations or different road environments, potentially leading to unsafe driving practices after passing the test. This contravenes the spirit of the DVSA testing objectives, which aim to produce safe drivers, not just individuals who can perform under test conditions. Another unacceptable approach is to rush through the syllabus to get the learner to test readiness prematurely. This can lead to superficial learning, where the learner may appear competent in controlled environments, but lacks the depth of understanding and experience to drive safely in real-world conditions. This poses a significant risk to the learner and other road users, and is ethically questionable. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to provide clear, constructive feedback and opportunities for the learner to self-correct is also professionally deficient. Effective learning requires active engagement and understanding of mistakes. Without this, the learner may not develop the critical thinking skills necessary for safe driving. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes the learner's long-term safety and competence. This involves understanding the DVSA syllabus thoroughly, assessing the learner's individual needs and progress, and adapting teaching methods accordingly. It requires a commitment to ethical practice, ensuring that the primary objective is to produce safe, responsible drivers, not merely to achieve a test pass. Continuous professional development and staying abreast of DVSA guidance are crucial for maintaining high standards. Question 6. Assessment of a driving examiner's process for evaluating a candidate's performance during the Leeds driving test, considering the DVSA regulatory framework. What is the most appropriate method for ensuring a fair and safe outcome? Option A. Meticulously observe and record all driving faults and serious/dangerous faults as defined by the DVSA syllabus, and assess the cumulative impact to determine the pass or fail outcome. Option B. Pass a candidate who has committed a serious or dangerous fault if they demonstrate strong hazard perception in other parts of the test. Option C. Allow a candidate to repeat a maneuver if the initial attempt was unsatisfactory, without marking it as a fault, to provide them with a better opportunity to pass. Option D. Overlook minor driving faults that do not appear to pose an immediate risk, focusing instead on the candidate's overall safe driving behavior. Correct answer is A. Meticulously observe and record all driving faults and serious/dangerous faults as defined by the DVSA syllabus, and assess the cumulative impact to determine the pass or fail outcome. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient service delivery with the paramount importance of adhering to the rigorous standards set by the DVSA for the Leeds driving test. A driving examiner must exercise sound judgment to ensure that the test accurately reflects a candidate's ability to drive safely and legally on public roads, without compromising the integrity of the examination process. The pressure to process candidates quickly can create a temptation to overlook minor deviations or to interpret borderline situations in favor of the candidate, which would be a serious breach of professional duty. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously observing the candidate's performance against the official DVSA syllabus for the Leeds driving test. This means identifying and recording every fault, whether it's a driving fault or a serious/dangerous fault, as defined by the DVSA guidelines. The examiner must then accurately assess the cumulative effect of these faults to determine if the candidate has met the required standard for passing. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the DVSA mandate to ensure that only competent and safe drivers are licensed. It upholds the integrity of the driving test and protects public safety by ensuring that all candidates are assessed fairly and consistently according to established criteria. Ethical considerations also demand impartiality and accuracy in assessment. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking minor driving faults that do not immediately appear to pose a risk, with the rationale that the candidate is generally competent. This is professionally unacceptable because the DVSA syllabus explicitly defines and categorizes all faults, and even minor faults, when accumulated, can indicate a lack of overall competence or attention to detail. The cumulative effect of multiple driving faults can lead to a serious or dangerous situation. Another incorrect approach is to pass a candidate who has committed a serious or dangerous fault, with the justification that the candidate demonstrated good hazard perception in other aspects of the test. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. Serious and dangerous faults, by definition, represent a significant risk to road safety and are immediate grounds for failing the test, regardless of performance in other areas. The DVSA syllabus is clear on this point, and any deviation undermines the entire purpose of the test. A further incorrect approach is to allow a candidate to repeat a maneuver that was initially performed poorly, without marking it as a fault, in order to give them a better chance of passing. This is a direct contravention of the DVSA assessment procedures. Each maneuver is assessed as it is performed, and any fault must be recorded. Allowing a do-over is not part of the testing process and constitutes unfair assessment, compromising the validity of the test results. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to the DVSA syllabus and regulations above all else. This involves maintaining a high level of concentration throughout the test, meticulously documenting all observation, and applying the fault grading system impartially. When faced with a borderline situation, the examiner should err on the side of caution and apply the rules as strictly defined, rather than making subjective judgments based on perceived overall competence or external pressures. Regular review of DVSA guidance and ongoing professional development are crucial to ensure consistent and accurate application of standards. Question 7. Compliance review shows that a driving school in Leeds is experiencing high demand, leading to a backlog of learners awaiting their practical tests. To expedite the process, the school is considering streamlining its internal documentation by relying primarily on instructor anecdotal feedback regarding syllabus coverage rather than a detailed, cross-referenced record of each learner's progress against the Leeds driver's test syllabus. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with DVSA regulations and maintain the integrity of the testing process? Option A. Accept instructor self-reported completion of syllabus modules as sufficient evidence, focusing on expediting the booking of Leeds driver's tests to reduce the learner backlog. Option B. Focus solely on the number of learners who have passed previous internal assessments, assuming this indicates sufficient preparation for the Leeds driver's test without detailed syllabus verification. Option C. Prioritize the speed of learner processing by accepting informal discussions with instructors as confirmation that learners have met the requirements for the Leeds driver's test. Option D. Implement a robust system for cross-referencing learner progress logs with instructor notes and examiner feedback to verify comprehensive syllabus coverage before a learner is deemed ready for the Leeds driver's test. The correct answer is D. Implement a robust system for cross-referencing learner progress logs with instructor notes and examiner feedback to verify comprehensive syllabus coverage before a learner is deemed ready for the Leeds driver's test. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing efficiency with the absolute requirement for accurate and complete documentation, a cornerstone of responsible driving instruction and licensing in Leeds, UK. The pressure to process a high volume of learners can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the assessment process, potentially leading to unqualified drivers on the road and regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to identify and rectify such procedural weaknesses. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves implementing a systematic review process that cross-references learner progress records with instructor logs and examiner feedback. This approach ensures that all aspects of the Leeds driver's test syllabus have been adequately covered and assessed. The justification for this lies in the Road Traffic Act 1988 and associated DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, guidelines, which mandate thorough and accurate assessment of a candidate's ability to drive safely and competently. This systematic review directly supports the objective of the Leeds driver's test, to ensure only safe and competent drivers are licensed. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on instructor self-reporting for syllabus completion. This is ethically problematic as it introduces a potential conflict of interest, where an instructor might overstate a learner's progress to expedite their testing. This fails to meet the DVSA requirement for objective assessment and verifiable evidence of competence. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the speed of processing learners over the thoroughness of documentation. This is a direct contravention of the DVSA emphasis on accurate record keeping and the integrity of the testing process. It risks allowing individuals to take the Leeds driver's test without being fully prepared, potentially leading to safety hazards and a breach of regulatory obligations. A further incorrect approach is to assume that a learner's confidence or a brief informal discussion with the instructor is sufficient evidence of syllabus mastery. This lacks the formal, documented evidence required by the DVSA and does not provide a clear audit trail for the assessment of each component of the Leeds driver's test syllabus. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a process-oriented mindset where the integrity and accuracy of documentation are paramount. This involves establishing clear protocols for record keeping, regular internal audits to verify compliance with the Leeds driver's test syllabus and DVSA guidelines, and fostering a culture where thoroughness is valued over speed. When faced with efficiency pressures, the decision-making framework should always prioritize regulatory compliance and the safety of the public over expediency. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates a driver in Ontario is distressed because their license has expired and they urgently need to drive for a family emergency. They approach a licensing official seeking immediate permission to drive, promising to renew their license as soon as possible. What is the most appropriate course of action for the licensing official to take? Option A. Issue a temporary, unofficial document allowing the individual to drive for the duration of their emergency, based on their promise to renew their license promptly. Option B. Allow the individual to drive temporarily, accepting their assurance that they will renew their license soon, to avoid causing further distress during their emergency. Option C. Clearly explain that operating a vehicle without a valid license is illegal under the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and advise the individual on the proper procedures for license renewal or obtaining a temporary permit through official channels. Option D. Suggest the individual take their chances with law enforcement, as the licensing office cannot assist with expired licenses outside of standard renewal procedures. The correct answer is C. Clearly explain that operating a vehicle without a valid license is illegal under the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and advise the individual on the proper procedures for license renewal or obtaining a temporary permit through official channels. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver to operate a vehicle with the paramount importance of ensuring public safety and adherence to licensing regulations in Ontario. A driver's personal circumstances, while understandable, cannot override the legal requirements for obtaining and maintaining a valid driver's license. The challenge lies in navigating the driver's distress while upholding the integrity of the licensing system. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves clearly and empathetically explaining to the individual that operating a vehicle without a valid license, regardless of the circumstances, is a serious offense under the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. This approach prioritizes regulatory compliance and public safety by refusing to condone or facilitate illegal activity. It involves informing the individual about the correct procedures for obtaining a license or reinstating one if it has been suspended, and directing them to appropriate resources within the Ontario Ministry of Transportation for guidance. This aligns with the ethical duty of licensing officials to enforce the law fairly and consistently, ensuring that only qualified and legally permitted individuals are on the road. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves allowing the individual to drive temporarily based on their promise to obtain a license soon. This is a significant regulatory failure, as it bypasses the established legal framework for licensing, which includes testing and verification processes designed to assess competence and eligibility. It creates a dangerous precedent and directly violates the Ontario Highway Traffic Act by permitting an unlicensed driver on public roads, thereby compromising public safety. Another incorrect approach is to provide the individual with a temporary permit to drive, even if they claim to have applied for a license, without official confirmation of a valid application and the issuance of a temporary permit by the Ministry of Transportation. Issuing such a document would be an unauthorized act. This constitutes a breach of administrative procedure and potentially a violation of the Highway Traffic Act, as only authorized personnel and processes can grant driving privileges. A further incorrect approach is to dismiss the individual's situation as a minor inconvenience and suggest they take their chances with law enforcement. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for the legal requirements. It fails to provide the individual with accurate information about their obligations and the consequences of driving without a license, and it neglects the licensing authority's role in promoting road safety and legal compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in licensing roles must operate within a strict legal and ethical framework. When faced with a situation where an individual is seeking to drive without a valid license, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the core legal requirement, possession of a valid license. 2. assessing the individual's current status against that requirement. 3. Clearly communicating the legal obligations and consequences of noncompliance. 4. Providing accurate information on the correct legal pathways to achieve compliance. 5. Refusing any action that would facilitate or condone illegal activity, regardless of perceived extenuating circumstances. Empathy should be expressed, but it must not supersede the mandate to uphold the law and protect public safety. Question 9. Consider a scenario where, during a Leeds driving test on a busy urban road, a candidate unexpectedly swerves to avoid a pothole, narrowly missing a parked car and causing a cyclist to brake sharply to avoid a collision. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the driving examiner to take? Option A. Immediately take control of the vehicle to ensure safety, and then assess the situation to determine the test outcome. Option B. Immediately terminate the test and fail the candidate due to the dangerous maneuver. Option C. Allow the candidate to continue the test, assuming they will correct their driving and that the incident was a minor lapse. Option D. Verbally warn the candidate about their swerving and instruct them to be more careful without taking physical control. The correct answer is A. Immediately take control of the vehicle to ensure safety, and then assess the situation to determine the test outcome. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driving instructor to balance the immediate need to assess the candidate's driving skills with the paramount importance of road safety and adherence to the specific regulations of the Leeds driving test. The instructor must make a judgment call under pressure, considering the potential impact of the candidate's actions on themselves, other road users, and the integrity of the testing process. The pressure to complete the test within a reasonable time frame must not override the fundamental duty of care and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the instructor immediately intervening to ensure safety. This means stopping the vehicle in a safe manner, if possible, or taking control to prevent an imminent hazard. The instructor must then assess the severity of the situation and determine if the candidate's actions constitute a serious fault or a dangerous one, which would necessitate the immediate termination of the test. This approach is correct because it prioritizes the safety of all road users, which is the primary objective of the driving test and a core ethical responsibility of the examiner. It aligns with the DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, guidelines, which mandate that examiners must take action to prevent danger, even if it means ending the test prematurely. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to allow the candidate to continue the test without intervention, assuming they might correct the error. This is ethically unacceptable and a regulatory failure, because it disregards the immediate risk posed to others and the candidate, violates the duty of care, and could lead to an accident. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately fail the candidate without a thorough assessment of the situation and the potential for correction. While safety is paramount, the test is designed to assess a range of skills. A hasty failure without proper evaluation might not accurately reflect the candidate's overall ability and could be perceived as unfair, although safety would still be the overriding factor. A further incorrect approach would be to verbally warn the candidate and expect them to self-correct, without taking any physical control or stopping the vehicle if the situation is escalating. This is a failure in professional judgment and a potential regulatory breach, as it does not adequately address an immediate safety concern and relies too heavily on the candidate's ability to react appropriately under pressure, which is precisely what is being tested. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Immediate threat assessment. Is there an immediate danger to life or property? 2. Intervention. If a threat exists, take immediate action to mitigate it, prioritizing safety. 3. Evaluation. Assess the cause and severity of the incident. 4. Decision. Based on the assessment and regulatory guidelines, decide on the appropriate course of action, which may include terminating the test. 5. Documentation. Record the incident and the decision-making process accurately. Question 10. Upon reviewing two potential driving positions in Leeds, one offering £15 per hour with guaranteed 40 hours per week and a comprehensive benefits package, and another offering £18 per hour with variable hours averaging 30 per week and no benefits, a driver facing immediate financial pressure needs to determine the most financially prudent choice over a 12-month period. If the £15/hour position incurs an estimated £100 per month in additional vehicle running costs due to increased mileage, and the pound 18/hour position incurs an estimated pound 75 per month in additional vehicle running costs. What is the difference in gross annual income between the two positions, and which position offers a higher net annual income after accounting for these running costs? Option A. The pound 18/hour position offers a higher net annual income by pound 1,500. Option B. The pound 18/hour position offers a higher net annual income by pound 2,400. Option C. The pound 15/hour position offers a higher net annual income by pound 2,100. Option D. The pound 15/hour position offers a higher net annual income by pound 1,200. The correct answer is C. The pound 15/hour position offers a higher net annual income by pound 2,100. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance immediate financial pressures with the long-term implications of their driving record and the potential impact on their livelihood. Temptation to accept a lower-paying job due to immediate financial need can lead to decisions that compromise future earning potential and adherence to professional standards. Careful judgment is required to assess the true cost of accepting a position that may not align with optimal career progression or may involve risks that could jeopardize their driving license. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough financial and career impact assessment. This approach prioritizes understanding the long-term financial implications beyond the immediate wage. It necessitates calculating the total compensation package, including benefits, potential for overtime and future earning growth, and comparing this to the projected costs associated with the new role, such as increased fuel consumption, vehicle wear and tear, and potential insurance premium increases. Furthermore, it involves evaluating the stability and future prospects of the employer and the role itself. This is correct because it aligns with the ethical obligation to make informed decisions that safeguard one's financial well-being and career trajectory, ensuring sustainability and avoiding short-sighted choices that could lead to greater hardship later. It reflects a responsible approach to career management, considering all relevant factors before committing to a new position. Incorrect approach is analysis. Accepting the first offer solely based on the highest hourly rate without considering the total compensation, potential for overtime, or future earning capacity is professionally unacceptable. This approach ignores the broader financial picture and the long-term sustainability of the income. It fails to account for hidden costs or the potential for the initial higher rate to be offset by fewer working hours or lack of benefits, leading to a potentially lower overall annual income and increased financial precarity. Focusing only on the immediate need for income and accepting any offer that provides a salary, regardless of the employer's stability, the nature of the work, or the potential for career advancement, is also professionally unsound. This approach prioritizes short-term relief over long-term security and professional growth. It risks accepting a position with a high likelihood of future instability, or one that offers no opportunities for skill development, ultimately hindering future earning potential and job satisfaction. Choosing a job based on convenience of location or perceived ease of work without a comprehensive financial analysis is professionally negligent. While convenience is a factor, it should not be the sole determinant. This approach fails to adequately assess whether the offered compensation adequately reflects the demands of the role, the potential for future financial growth, or the overall impact on the driver's financial health. It overlooks the critical need to ensure the chosen employment is financially viable and contributes positively to long-term goals. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that involves a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis. This begins with clearly defining personal financial needs and career aspirations. Next, gather detailed information about each potential job offer, including salary, benefits, working hours, overtime potential, employer stability, and opportunities for advancement. Perform a detailed financial projection, calculating net income after all associated costs, fuel, maintenance, insurance, etc., and comparing it against current financial obligations and future savings goals. Evaluate the qualitative aspects, such as job satisfaction, work-life balance, and potential for professional development. Finally, make a decision that best aligns with both immediate financial requirements and long-term career and financial well-being, prioritizing informed choices over immediate gratification or convenience. Question 11. When evaluating the impact of a delay on your schedule, what is the most responsible course of action for a driver operating a vehicle in Ontario if they are running late for an important appointment? Option A. Maintain the posted speed limit and obey all traffic signals and signs, accepting the possibility of arriving late. Option B. Increase speed beyond the posted limit to try and make up for lost time. Option C. Overtake slower vehicles aggressively, even if it requires exceeding the speed limit or using unsafe passing zones. Option D. Proceed through a red traffic signal if the intersection appears clear to save time. The correct answer is A. Maintain the posted speed limit and obey all traffic signals and signs, accepting the possibility of arriving late. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the overarching responsibility to adhere to traffic laws and ensure public safety. The pressure of being late can lead to impulsive decisions that compromise safety and legal compliance. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and legality over personal urgency. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a driver acknowledging the delay and making a conscious decision to adhere to the posted speed limit and traffic signals, even if it means arriving late. This approach is correct because it prioritizes public safety and compliance with the Highway Traffic Act of Ontario. The Act mandates adherence to speed limits and traffic control devices to prevent accidents and ensure orderly traffic flow. Ethically, a driver has a duty of care to other road users, which is fulfilled by driving predictably and lawfully. Incorrect approaches analysis. Choosing to exceed the speed limit to make up for lost time is incorrect because it directly violates the Highway Traffic Act of Ontario. This action significantly increases the risk of accidents, reduces reaction time, and can lead to severe penalties, including fines and demerit points. It demonstrates a disregard for public safety and the law. Ignoring a red traffic signal to save time is also incorrect and highly dangerous. This action is a severe violation of the Highway Traffic Act of Ontario and poses an immediate and grave risk of a collision with other vehicles or pedestrians. It shows a complete disregard for traffic control systems designed to prevent such incidents. Attempting to overtake other vehicles in a manner that is unsafe or illegal, such as on a blind corner or exceeding the speed limit during the overtake, is incorrect. While overtaking is permitted under certain conditions, doing so to compensate for lateness often leads to aggressive driving and increased risk, violating provisions of the Highway Traffic Act related to safe passing. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must operate within established legal and ethical frameworks. When faced with time pressures, the decision-making process should involve 1. Recognizing the constraint being late. 2. Identifying the relevant rules and responsibilities, Highway Traffic Act of Ontario, duty of care. 3. Evaluating potential actions against these rules and responsibilities. 4. Selecting the action that upholds safety and legality, even if it means accepting a consequence like being late. This prioritizes long-term safety and professional integrity over short-term convenience. Question 12. The analysis reveals that a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, has a learner driver who is extremely eager to book their practical driving test, believing they are ready. However, the instructor has observed recurring issues with the learner's hazard perception in complex urban traffic and a tendency to hesitate at junctions, leading to minor safety concerns during lessons. Considering the DVSA requirements for independent driving and overall road safety, which approach best reflects professional and ethical conduct? Option A. Book the test as requested, assuming that the pressure of the actual test environment will motivate the learner to perform better and overcome their current shortcomings. Option B. Conduct a final mock test simulating DVSA conditions. Objectively assess performance against the official test criteria, and if the learner has not consistently demonstrated safe, independent driving with minimal faults, clearly explain the areas needing further practice and recommend additional lessons before re-evaluating test readiness. Option C. Inform the learner that they are not yet ready for the test, but avoid detailing specific faults to prevent discouraging them, suggesting they continue lessons without a clear improvement plan. Option D. Agree to book the test immediately to appease the learner's enthusiasm, with the intention of providing subtle verbal cues during the test to help them avoid potential faults. The correct answer is B. Conduct a final mock test simulating DVSA conditions. Objectively assess performance against the official test criteria, and if the learner has not consistently demonstrated safe, independent driving with minimal faults, clearly explain the areas needing further practice and recommend additional lessons before re-evaluating test readiness. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, as it involves assessing a learner-driver's readiness for their practical test while balancing the learner's eagerness with road safety and DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, standards. The instructor must make a judgment call that prioritizes public safety and adherence to regulatory requirements over potentially appeasing a client. The professional challenge lies in the subjective nature of assessing driving competence and the potential for personal bias or pressure to influence this assessment. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough, objective assessment of the learner's driving skills against the DVSA test criteria. This means the instructor must honestly evaluate whether the learner consistently demonstrates safe driving, adheres to traffic laws, and can independently manage various road conditions and situations without significant faults. If the learner has not yet reached the required standard, the instructor must communicate this clearly and constructively, explaining the specific areas needing improvement and outlining a plan for further training. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the DVSA mandate to ensure that only drivers who are safe and competent are licensed, thereby protecting public safety and upholding the integrity of the driving test process. Ethically, the instructor has a duty of care to the learner and the public. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves agreeing to put the learner forward for the test despite recognizing significant safety concerns and a lack of consistent competence. This fails to meet DVSA standards, as the learner is unlikely to pass and, more importantly, may pose a risk to themselves and others on the road. This action breaches the instructor's professional duty of care and undermines the purpose of the driving test. Another incorrect approach is to agree to the test, but then to excessively coach or guide the learner during the test itself, effectively taking control of the vehicle to prevent faults. This is unethical and against DVSA regulations, as the test is designed to assess the learner's independent driving ability. Such actions would invalidate the test and demonstrate a lack of integrity. A further incorrect approach is to postpone the decision indefinitely without providing clear feedback or a structured training plan. While avoiding a direct refusal might seem easier, it fails to address the learner's development needs and leaves them in a state of uncertainty, potentially leading to frustration and a lack of progress. This is professionally irresponsible, as it does not facilitate the learner's journey towards safe, independent driving. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly understand and apply the DVSA assessment criteria. Second, they should conduct a comprehensive and objective evaluation of the learner's performance, identifying both strengths and weaknesses. Third, they must communicate their findings transparently and constructively to the learner, providing specific examples and actionable feedback. Fourth, they should develop a tailored training plan to address identified areas for improvement. Finally, they must remain firm in their professional judgment regarding test readiness, prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance above all else. Question 13. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of significant disruption to Leeds public transport services due to an impending industrial action by bus drivers. Considering the Leeds City Council's responsibilities, which of the following actions best addresses this situation? Option A. Proactively engage with trade unions, other transport providers, and the public to develop and communicate a comprehensive contingency plan, exploring all avenues for resolution and mitigation. Option B. Immediately implement emergency transport measures and focus on securing alternative private transport providers without prior consultation with the drivers' union. Option C. Prioritize the financial stability of the transport authority by reducing services to essential routes only, regardless of the broader impact on commuters and businesses in Leeds. Option D. Issue a public statement minimizing the anticipated impact of the industrial action to avoid public panic, while internally preparing for minimal service adjustments. The correct answer is A. Proactively engage with trade unions, other transport providers, and the public to develop and communicate a comprehensive contingency plan, exploring all avenues for resolution and mitigation. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a potential for significant disruption to Leeds' public transport services due to an upcoming industrial action by bus drivers. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate operational needs of the transport authority with the broader public interest and regulatory obligations. The Leeds City Council, as the responsible body, must make a judgment call that minimizes harm while adhering to its statutory duties. The best approach involves proactively engaging with all relevant stakeholders to develop and communicate a comprehensive contingency plan. This includes collaborating with the trade unions to understand the specific grievances and explore potential resolutions, liaising with other transport providers to explore alternative arrangements, and transparently informing the public about the anticipated disruptions and available mitigation measures. This approach is correct because it aligns with the principles of good governance, public service, and the Leeds City Council's duty to ensure the provision of adequate transport services as far as reasonably practicable, as outlined in relevant UK transport legislation and local authority guidance on public engagement during industrial disputes. It prioritizes minimizing public inconvenience and maintaining essential services through collaborative problem-solving and clear communication. An approach that focuses solely on implementing emergency measures without prior consultation with the drivers' union is professionally unacceptable. This would likely exacerbate tensions, potentially leading to a more prolonged or severe dispute, and could be seen as a failure to engage in good faith negotiations, which is an ethical and often a regulatory expectation in industrial relations. Another unacceptable approach is to downplay the potential impact of the industrial action to the public. This constitutes a failure in transparency and public duty. Responsible authorities are expected to provide accurate and timely information to allow citizens to make informed decisions, especially concerning essential services like public transport. Finally, an approach that prioritizes the immediate financial interests of the transport authority over the public's access to transport is ethically flawed. While financial sustainability is important, the primary mandate of a public transport authority is to serve the public. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough impact assessment, followed by a multi-stakeholder engagement strategy. This involves understanding the root causes of the dispute, exploring all available resolution avenues, developing robust contingency plans, and maintaining open and honest communication with all affected parties, including the public. Question 14. Implementation of new traffic calming measures in Leeds presents a challenge for driving instructors. What is the most effective approach for a Leeds-based driving instructor to ensure learner drivers are adequately prepared for their driving test and for safe, independent driving in light of these changes? Option A. Share personal opinions and biases about the effectiveness or necessity of the new traffic calming measures with learners to influence their perception. Option B. Dedicate a disproportionately large amount of training time solely to practicing around the new traffic calming measures, potentially neglecting other essential driving skills. Option C. Continue training as per the existing syllabus without specific adjustments, assuming learners will adapt naturally to the new traffic calming measures. Option D. Proactively assess the impact of the new traffic calming measures on the Leeds road network and systematically integrate relevant training scenarios into learner-driver instruction. Correct answer is D. Proactively assess the impact of the new traffic calming measures on the Leeds road network and systematically integrate relevant training scenarios into learner-driver instruction. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, concerning the impact of a new traffic calming measure on learner-driver preparation. The challenge lies in balancing the need to adhere to the DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, syllabus and testing standards with the practical reality of adapting training to evolving road environments. A driving instructor must exercise careful judgment to ensure learners are adequately prepared for the test and for safe independent driving, without compromising the integrity of the testing process or introducing unnecessary bias. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively assessing the impact of the new traffic calming measures on the Leeds road network and systematically integrating relevant training scenarios into the learner's driving instruction. This approach prioritizes learner competency and test readiness, by ensuring they gain experience with the new road features under supervised conditions. It aligns with the DVSA emphasis on developing safe and competent drivers who can navigate all types of road conditions, including those modified by new infrastructure. The instructor should research the specific nature of the traffic calming measures, e.g., speed humps, chicanes, narrowed lanes, and identify appropriate locations within Leeds to practice maneuvers and hazard perception related to these features. This ensures that learners are not only familiar with the measures, but also confident and skilled in responding to them, directly supporting their ability to pass the Leeds driving test and drive safely post-test. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to ignore the new traffic calming measures entirely, continuing to train learners as if the road environment has not changed. This fails to prepare learners for the actual conditions they will encounter on Leeds roads during their test and in their future driving. It is a dereliction of professional duty to ensure comprehensive preparation and could lead to learners failing their test due to unfamiliarity with these features or, more critically, to unsafe driving practices. Another incorrect approach is to overemphasize the new traffic calming measures, dedicating an excessive amount of training time to them, to the detriment of other essential driving skills and syllabus requirements. While adaptation is necessary, disproportionate focus could lead to learners becoming overly anxious or hesitant around these features, potentially hindering their overall driving confidence and ability to perform other necessary maneuvers. This deviates from the balanced approach required by the DVSA syllabus. A further incorrect approach is to express personal opinions or biases about the traffic calming measures to learners, potentially influencing their perception and performance. Driving instructors must remain neutral and objective, focusing on teaching learners how to safely and legally navigate all road features, regardless of the instructor's personal views. Introducing bias can negatively impact a learner's confidence and their ability to make independent, safe decisions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic and evidence-based approach. This involves staying informed about changes in the local driving environment, understanding the implications of these changes for driving competency, and adapting training methodologies accordingly. A framework for decision-making includes 1. Information gathering, researching and understanding the new traffic calming measures. 2. Impact assessment, evaluating how these measures affect driving tasks and potential hazards. 3. Curriculum adaptation, integrating relevant training scenarios into the existing syllabus. 4. Learner centricity, ensuring training remains focused on the learner's development and test readiness. 5. Professional objectivity, maintaining neutrality and focusing on safe driving practices. Question 15. To address the challenge of a learner driver in Leeds, UK, who may be struggling to read distant objects during lessons, what is the most appropriate course of action for their driving instructor? Option A. Tell the learner that the eyesight test at the driving test is usually quite lenient and they should try their best on the day. Option B. Subtly suggest to the learner that they might need to focus a bit harder when looking at signs and distant objects. Option C. Continue with lessons as normal, hoping the learner will mention any eyesight issues if they arise during the practical test. Option D. Advise the learner that they must meet the DVSA eyesight requirements for driving, including consulting an optician if they have concerns, and explain the number plate test requirement. The correct answer is D. Advise the learner that they must meet the DVSA eyesight requirements for driving, including consulting an optician if they have concerns, and explain the number plate test requirement. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for a driving instructor in Leeds, UK, who is aware of a potential issue with a learner driver's eyesight that could impact their ability to drive safely and pass their test. The challenge lies in balancing the learner's desire to pass their test with the paramount importance of public safety and adherence to UK driving regulations. Careful judgment is required to navigate this ethical and regulatory dilemma without compromising either the learner's or the public's well-being. The best approach involves directly addressing the learner's potential eyesight issue and guiding them towards the necessary steps to rectify it. This approach prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. Specifically, it entails advising the learner that they must meet the minimum eyesight standards as stipulated by the DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, for driving in the UK. This includes informing them that if they have concerns about their vision, they should consult an optician for a sight test and obtain corrective lenses if needed. The instructor should explain that passing the driving test requires demonstrating the ability to read a car number plate from a prescribed distance, a requirement directly linked to eyesight. This approach is correct because it upholds the legal and ethical obligation to ensure drivers are fit to drive, as mandated by the Road Traffic Act and DVSA guidelines. It proactively addresses a potential safety hazard and empowers the learner to take responsible action. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential eyesight issue and proceed with lessons and test preparation as normal. This fails to uphold the instructor's duty of care and disregards the DVSA eyesight requirements, potentially leading to a driver who is unsafe on the road and who has not met legal prerequisites for driving. Another incorrect approach would be to subtly hint at the eyesight issue without explicitly advising the learner to seek professional help. This is insufficient as it does not provide clear guidance or ensure the learner understands the seriousness of the requirement and the steps they need to take. It leaves the responsibility for action ambiguous. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to suggest that the learner might be able to get by, or that the eyesight check during the test is not rigorous. This is unethical and potentially illegal, as it encourages deception and undermines the integrity of the licensing process and public safety. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance above all else. When a potential safety or legal issue arises, the professional must 1. Identify the potential risk or noncompliance. 2. Understand the relevant regulations and ethical obligations. 3. Communicate clearly and directly with the individual involved, explaining the requirements and consequences. 4. Guide the individual towards the correct course of action to rectify the issue. 5. Document the interaction and advice given. Question 16. Examination of the data shows a driver in Leeds has been observed exhibiting a minor traffic infraction, and when approached by an official to provide details for a safety report, the driver appears hesitant and unwilling to cooperate. What is the most appropriate initial course of action to ensure both road safety objectives and respect for individual rights? Option A. Disregard the driver's reluctance and proceed with the safety report based on the initial observation without further interaction. Option B. Politely reiterate the purpose of the request, explain the relevant legal basis for requiring the information if applicable, and offer assistance in understanding the process, noting the vehicle details for potential follow-up if cooperation remains absent. Option C. Attempt to persuade the driver through assertive questioning and implied consequences to provide the requested information. Option D. Immediately issue a penalty notice for non-cooperation and escalate the situation to a higher enforcement level. The correct answer is B. Politely reiterate the purpose of the request, explain the relevant legal basis for requiring the information if applicable, and offer assistance in understanding the process, noting the vehicle details for potential follow-up if cooperation remains absent. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information to improve road safety with the privacy rights of individuals and the legal requirements for data handling in Leeds. The driver's refusal to provide information directly, coupled with the potential for a minor infraction, necessitates a careful, legally compliant approach that avoids overreach or presumption. Judgment is required to determine the appropriate level of intervention and information gathering. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves politely reiterating the purpose of the request, explaining the legal basis for requiring the information, if applicable under Leeds local traffic regulations or broader UK road traffic law, and offering assistance to the driver in understanding the process. This respects the driver's autonomy while upholding the objective of road safety. If the driver continues to refuse, the next step would be to follow established procedures for reporting such incidents, which may involve noting the vehicle details and circumstances for potential follow-up by the appropriate authorities, rather than escalating to immediate enforcement action without further justification. This aligns with the principles of proportionality and due process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately issue a penalty notice or escalate to a more severe enforcement action based solely on the driver's initial reluctance to provide information. This fails to acknowledge the driver's right to understand the situation and potentially seek clarification. It presumes guilt or noncompliance without due process and could lead to an unjustified penalty, violating principles of fairness and potentially contravening UK road traffic legislation regarding the issuance of notices. Another incorrect approach is to abandon the inquiry entirely without documenting the interaction or the reason for the driver's refusal. While respecting the driver's immediate refusal, this approach neglects the potential road safety implications and the opportunity to gather information that could contribute to broader safety improvements in Leeds. It represents a failure to diligently pursue the objective of enhancing road safety, which is a core responsibility. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to coerce or intimidate the driver into providing the information through aggressive questioning or threats of immediate consequences. This is ethically unsound and legally problematic, as it can constitute harassment and undermine the legitimacy of the interaction. It also fails to adhere to the professional standards of conduct expected of individuals involved in road safety enforcement or data collection. Professional reasoning. Professionals in Leeds dealing with such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes clear communication, adherence to legal mandates, and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Understanding the specific legal authority for requesting information in the given context. 2. Communicating the purpose of the request clearly and respectfully. 3. Offering assistance and opportunities for clarification to the individual. 4. If cooperation is not forthcoming, following established protocols for documenting the incident and escalating appropriately, ensuring that any further action is legally justified and proportionate to the circumstances. Question 17. Research into the implementation of new traffic calming measures on the Leeds road network has highlighted the need for a thorough impact assessment. Considering the specific context of Leeds, which of the following approaches would best ensure the successful and safe integration of these changes for local drivers? Option A. Prioritize the installation of measures that are known to reduce average speeds without significant prior engagement with the local community. Option B. Focus solely on the theoretical safety improvements predicted by traffic engineering models without a detailed assessment of how Leeds drivers might adapt to the changes. Option C. Conduct extensive pre-implementation consultation with local residents, businesses, and driving instructors, and use their feedback to refine the design and implementation plan. Option D. Implement the new measures immediately based on best practices observed in other UK cities, assuming similar outcomes will be achieved in Leeds. The correct answer is C. Conduct extensive pre-implementation consultation with local residents, businesses, and driving instructors, and use their feedback to refine the design and implementation plan. Explanation. Research into the impact of new traffic calming measures on the Leeds road network presents a professionally challenging scenario due to the inherent conflict between improving road safety and potentially disrupting established driving habits and local access. Drivers in Leeds are accustomed to certain road layouts and speeds, and significant changes can lead to confusion, frustration, and even increased risk if not managed effectively. Careful judgment is required to balance the intended safety benefits with the practical implications for road users. The best approach involves a comprehensive pre-implementation impact assessment that includes extensive consultation with local residents, businesses, and driving instructors. This proactive engagement allows for the identification of potential issues, such as access difficulties for specific vehicles, changes in traffic flow patterns that might create new hazards, or the need for additional driver education. By gathering diverse perspectives and incorporating feedback into the final design and implementation plan, the Council can mitigate negative consequences and ensure the measures are effective and well received. This aligns with the ethical duty to consider the well-being of all road users and the regulatory requirement to implement changes in a manner that promotes public safety and minimizes undue disruption. An approach that prioritizes immediate implementation without thorough consultation is professionally unacceptable. This failure to engage stakeholders neglects the practical realities faced by Leeds drivers and businesses, potentially leading to unforeseen safety risks or significant inconvenience. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the community affected by the changes. Another unacceptable approach is to solely rely on data from similar schemes in other cities without considering the unique characteristics of Leeds' road network and driver demographics. While comparative data can be informative, it does not account for local nuances, such as specific road widths, junction designs, or the typical driving styles prevalent in Leeds. This can lead to the adoption of inappropriate or ineffective measures, failing to achieve the desired safety outcomes and potentially creating new problems. Finally, an approach that focuses only on the theoretical safety benefits without a practical assessment of driver behavior and local conditions is also flawed. This overlooks the human element of driving and the potential for drivers to react in unexpected ways to new infrastructure. A robust impact assessment must bridge the gap between theoretical ideals and practical application. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the problem and the intended outcomes. This should be followed by a comprehensive data gathering phase, including site surveys, traffic analysis, and crucially, stakeholder consultation. The development of potential solutions should then be informed by this data, with a strong emphasis on evaluating the potential impacts of each option on all relevant parties. Finally, a clear implementation and monitoring plan, including mechanisms for feedback and adaptation, is essential for ensuring the long-term success and safety of any new measures. Question 18. Which approach would be most appropriate for a candidate undertaking their Leeds driving test when the examiner directs them onto a route that appears significantly longer and more complex than a route the candidate knows to be quicker? Option A. Ignore the examiner's instructions and proceed on a route the candidate believes is more efficient. Option B. Speed up to compensate for the perceived extra time the longer route will take. Option C. Deviate from the examiner's directions to take a known quicker route, believing it will save time. Option D. Strictly follow the examiner's directions and the designated route, maintaining safe driving practices throughout. The correct answer is D. Strictly follow the examiner's directions and the designated route, maintaining safe driving practices throughout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the overarching responsibility to adhere to road safety regulations and the specific requirements of the Leeds driving test. The temptation to deviate from the planned route or to take shortcuts, especially under pressure, can lead to breaches of test conditions or unsafe driving practices. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and compliance over expediency. Correct approach analysis. The approach that represents best professional practice involves strictly adhering to the examiner's instructions and the planned test route, even if it appears less efficient or more challenging. This approach is correct because the Leeds driving test is designed to assess a driver's ability to navigate safely and competently within the established rules and procedures of the UK's driving regulations. Deviating from the examiner's instructions or the designated route would constitute a failure to follow the test protocol, potentially leading to an immediate fail. This aligns with the DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, guidelines, which emphasize that the test assesses a candidate's ability to drive safely and independently, following directions and road signs. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that involves taking a perceived shortcut without explicit instruction from the examiner, even if it seems more direct, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to demonstrate the candidate's ability to follow instructions and adhere to the planned test route, which is a fundamental requirement of the assessment. It also risks entering unfamiliar or potentially hazardous road conditions without the examiner's awareness or consent, violating the controlled environment of the test. Another unacceptable approach would be to ignore the examiner's instructions and proceed on a route the candidate believes is better or easier. This directly contravenes the examiner's authority and the structured nature of the driving test. It demonstrates a lack of respect for the assessment process and an inability to follow directions, both critical elements of safe driving and test compliance. Finally, an approach that involves speeding up to make up for lost time, even if the examiner has given instructions that lead to a longer route, is also professionally unsound. This prioritizes speed over safety and adherence to legal speed limits, which are core components of the UK's driving regulations and the driving test. It shows a disregard for the examiner's pacing and the importance of controlled, safe driving. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols and safety regulations. This involves actively listening to and following the examiner's instructions precisely, understanding that the test is designed to evaluate specific competencies within a controlled environment. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from the examiner is the appropriate course of action. The focus should always be on demonstrating safe, legal, and compliant driving, rather than attempting to optimize the route or speed based on personal judgment during the test. Question 19. Governance review demonstrates that a Leeds driving test examiner has observed a candidate exhibiting significant nervousness, leading to a few minor driving errors. The examiner is considering how to best conclude the assessment while upholding the integrity of the testing process. Which of the following approaches best reflects professional practice and regulatory compliance for a Leeds driving test? Option A. The examiner will deviate from the standard marking criteria to allow for the candidate's anxiety, potentially adjusting the pass threshold based on their emotional state. Option B. The examiner will primarily focus on reassuring the nervous candidate and offering encouragement, with a secondary, less detailed consideration of any driving errors. Option C. The examiner will overlook the minor driving faults due to the candidate's evident nervousness, focusing instead on their overall effort and desire to pass. Option D. The examiner will meticulously record all observed driving faults, categorize them according to the official Leeds driving test marking scheme, and provide detailed, constructive feedback to the candidate, regardless of their nervousness. The correct answer is D. The examiner will meticulously record all observed driving faults, categorize them according to the official Leeds driving test marking scheme, and provide detailed, constructive feedback to the candidate, regardless of their nervousness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a driver's desire to pass their Leeds driving test and the examiner's duty to uphold road safety standards. The driver's anxiety and potential for minor errors necessitate a careful and objective assessment by the examiner, who must balance fairness with the paramount importance of public safety. The best approach involves the examiner meticulously documenting all observed faults, categorizing them according to the official Leeds driving test marking scheme, and providing clear, constructive feedback to the candidate. This method ensures that the assessment is objective, transparent, and directly linked to the established criteria for safe driving. It aligns with the regulatory framework governing driving tests in the UK, which mandates a standardized and fair evaluation process designed to ensure only competent drivers are licensed. Ethical considerations also support this approach, as it promotes honesty and accountability in the licensing process, safeguarding other road users. An approach that overlooks minor faults to accommodate the driver's perceived nervousness is professionally unacceptable. This would violate the regulatory requirement for a consistent and rigorous testing standard, potentially leading to the licensing of drivers who have not demonstrated the necessary skills and judgment to drive safely. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty, as it prioritizes the candidate's immediate desire over the broader public interest in road safety. Another unacceptable approach is to focus solely on the driver's emotional state without adequately assessing their driving performance. While empathy is important, the primary purpose of the test is to evaluate driving competence. Failing to record and address driving faults, regardless of the driver's demeanor, undermines the integrity of the test and the licensing system. This approach disregards the specific fault reporting requirement mandated by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA. Finally, an approach that involves the examiner offering unsolicited advice or coaching during the test, beyond what is permitted by the test protocol, is also professionally unsound. This blurs the line between assessment and instruction, compromising the objectivity of the evaluation. It deviates from the established procedures and could be perceived as biased, thereby eroding trust in the testing process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to regulatory guidelines, ethical principles of fairness and public safety, and the specific procedural requirements of the Leeds driving test. This involves maintaining professional detachment, focusing on observable driving behaviors, and applying the established marking criteria consistently and impartially. Question 20. Strategic planning requires a Leeds driving instructor to accurately assess the financial implications for a student preparing for their practical driving test. A student has completed 35 hours of lessons at a rate of £30 per hour and has 5 more hours of lessons planned before their test. The DVSA practical driving test fee is £65. If the instructor were to book the test on behalf of the student, what would be the total cost to the student, assuming the instructor adds a 10% administrative surcharge to the total lesson cost and the test fee? Option A. The instructor should calculate the total cost of the remaining lessons, add the DVSA test fee, and advise the student to book the test themselves through the official DVSA portal, providing them with the total estimated expenditure. Option B. The instructor informs the student that the test fee is included in their lesson package and proceeds to book the test for them without detailing the individual costs. Option C. The instructor books the test for the student, charging £30 per hour for the remaining 5 hours, £150, plus the £65 test fee, and adds a 10% surcharge on the total of £215. Option D. The instructor estimates the total cost of remaining lessons and the test fee, then books the test for the student, informing them of an approximate total cost. The correct answer is A. The instructor should calculate the total cost of the remaining lessons, add the DVSA test fee, and advise the student to book the test themselves through the official DVSA portal, providing them with the total estimated expenditure. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Leeds driving instructor by requiring them to balance client financial expectations with the regulatory requirements for test booking and the ethical obligation to provide accurate advice. The instructor must navigate potential conflicts arising from a client's eagerness to book a test and the practical limitations imposed by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA booking system, which is governed by specific rules in the UK. Misinterpreting or miscommunicating these rules can lead to financial loss for the client and reputational damage for the instructor. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves accurately calculating the total cost of the remaining lessons and the test fee, then clearly communicating this total to the client, advising them to book the test themselves through the official DVSA portal. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to DVSA regulations, which stipulate that candidates must book their tests directly. It also upholds ethical standards by providing transparent and truthful financial information, preventing any perception of the instructor profiting from test booking or misrepresenting availability. The calculation ensures the client understands the full financial commitment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves the instructor booking the test on behalf of the client and adding a surcharge. This is professionally unacceptable because it violates DVSA guidelines, which prohibit instructors from booking tests for clients and charging an additional fee beyond the official DVSA test fee. It creates a conflict of interest and can be seen as exploiting the client's lack of knowledge. Another incorrect approach is for the instructor to estimate the total cost without performing an exact calculation and then booking the test for the client. This is flawed because it relies on estimation rather than precise figures, potentially leading to the client being undercharged or overcharged. Furthermore, booking the test for the client, as mentioned previously, contravenes DVSA regulations. A further incorrect approach is to tell the client that the test fee is included in the lesson package without specifying the exact amount or the booking procedure. This is misleading and unprofessional. It fails to provide the client with a clear understanding of the total expenditure and bypasses the requirement for the client to book their own test, potentially leading to confusion and non-compliance with DVSA rules. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, regulatory compliance, and client welfare. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulations of the governing body, DVSA in this case. 2. Performing accurate calculations to provide clear financial information. 3. Communicating all information truthfully and directly to the client. 4. Empowering the client to make informed decisions and take necessary actions themselves, especially when dealing with official booking procedures.